let's learn Vue.js. I'm going to start this thing off with a little introduction and an overview of Vue.js, and then we'll build part of an app. So Vue.js is a JavaScript framework, just like Angular, React, Ember, Riot, Polymer, all those ones. That has a focus on creating new, and this, they call them components in this. I think in Angular they're called directives. In Polymer they're just tags. I forget what they call them in Polymer, but whatever. New, HTML elements that will then get translated into something else and have a whole bunch of JavaScript glommed on that makes them do cool stuff. So let's start off with the basics. Let me move on to step one. I'll try and follow my script at least a little bit. So we're going to, first thing, just the basic data binding. This is the, oh, that doesn't look so great. Ooh. Oh man. Okay. So, alright. So I'm doing this in Laravel. So this is a blade view. So just imagine that everything outside of this content section is just regular HTML. So this is the only part we really care about. What we have is a div with an ID of Vue app. We're going to bind our Vue instance to that sucker. And then inside here we have these curly braces and text. That should look pretty familiar to other frameworks. I have to put the @ sign in front of it because I'm working in Blade right now. But that's just a necessary evil for the moment. We're going to get away from that pretty quick. So here I'm pulling in Vue. This is a normal script source sucker. And then here is all you need to power this extremely simple thing. So what I have right here is, here's where I'm targeting that Vue div with an ID of Vue app. And then I'm setting some data on this. And that means that I'm going to have whatever indices are in here, I'm going to have available as variables up in my Vue. So as you can see, we bind text there, and I think I'm saying, yeah, let's learn Vue.js. Chrome, and refresh the page. Wow, it says let's learn Vue.js, and you even saw it just for a moment flash there, the curly braces. Oh, that seems really shady. Well, it's just an optimization task that I omitted by doing the most dirt simple setup I could. So let's move on to step 2. So at this step, we've got the official first demo of the data binding. So you'll always see somebody do this. So official data binding. So what I have on here is a input. And I'm doing just like with Angular or something I have is called v-model. And what you'll see here in the view is we have v-model text, and then in here we have text, both using the same variable. When the variable updates, it updates in the view. So pretty darn simple. Nothing changed in my in the stuff down at the bottom. We're just reusing that same text variable. So you can also do lists. So here in my Vue update, there we go. Here in my Vue data, so we left text in there. We added another one, which is people. It's an array of people who just have a name. It's just their entire name. And then up in our Vue, we're still looking at that text. Now we have a unordered list with some LIs, and I'm doing v-for person in people, so that'll iterate through all the people in the people array, and then I'm calling out the name property on the person, and then you get something like this. Like, give it up for these people, because the text, I changed the text variable to be give it up for these people. So that's pretty darn simple. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, now we're moving on to filters. Filters are really cool. Filters are just simple ways to, I didn't change anything down below in the Vue stuff, but I did add this pipe and uppercase here. So what this is doing is it's piping it through a filter, and this uppercase filter is one that's bottled up with Vue by default, and it's just going to make all the text uppercase. So pretty simple there. So now all the text is uppercase. We have another one for lowercase. So the first name and last name were capitalized. Now I made them all lowercase. Here's one where I'm just capitalizing the first, and you can see all that changes here is I change it to lowercase. I change them all to lowercase, and then I use the I'm not used to trackpad. I'm not used to trackpad here, so then I did a capitalize, and what capitalize does is capitalizes the first letter, so it's different than uppercase. And it's only going to capitalize the first letter of whatever the string is. So you'll notice it does Craig. It's capitalized, but Farnsborough is not because it's not that smart. So you'd have to like split it out and then run the filter on that. But I'm just going through this to be nice and simple here. So let's move on to, what did I do? 7. Okay. So it also has something for displaying JSON, which is really handy. So I'm just going to display my entire people. Oh man, what the heck? This trackpad's crazy. It's got like multi-touch and stuff. Alright. So I got my people array and I'm piping it through the JSON filter, and this is just going to output nice looking JSON. So ta-da, that's nice. The JSON filter is one that's just prepackaged. Yeah, once I get to, I'll get to a custom filter at some point, but for now, if it's just a string and I don't define it down in my Vue instance, Vue stuff down here, then it just came with Vue. Trying to get through this. This is kind of the boring stuff. So now what I've added to the right of JSON here, you can see I added 10. It's because JSON, these filters can take arguments, and this one happens to take one for indentation. So the default indentation for each level in the JSON is 2 spaces, and you can just change it. This just changes it to 10, which is, boy, this is the least exciting thing ever, but now I got this really spaced out. But that could be handy. Maybe you like 4. I like 4, so I would go for that. Yeah, exactly. So speaking of 4, let's work with V4, V-4. So we've just been doing people and person and people. I'm just going through all of them. But there's ways to control that. We can change the order, and we can change what field we're ordering by. So order by, you have to give it a field, or I guess it's really the property. You stick that in quotes, and then by default it's just going to go through ordering descending. But if you do a -1, it'll do ascending, whichever one I didn't just say. And now you can see it's starting with Tiffany, Tiff, Annie. So, and then going through the other way. And of course we can invert that, or we can limit which ones we're actually iterating over by using, instead of order by, filter by. So what this does is the first argument is really, it's like a sentence kind of argument. So this one's a little different. But so the C is saying I want only names that have a capital C in them, which is pretty nice. So now you'll see these are the only guys that had a capital C. Actually, I think they're the ones with a C. I'm not sure if it's case sensitive. I forgot. But you can test that out on your own and find out. And of course, you could just change this to something like that. Well, and now we'll get, oh, there were no M's, really? Oh, geez, I'm really stupid. How about F? I know there's an F in there. There. That's just all the people with an F in their name. So you could also, you could do it on a different, is it?
It is not.
It is not. Okay, so there, that's good to know. So there's also, you could change what field you're doing this on. Obviously, you could do all sorts of different things with this. This is pretty darn handy, just for limiting your stuff. You know, filter by shown being true or something like that. So let's move on. That's all just comes right with Vue, so you can do a lot of, get off the ground pretty quickly here. So the coolest thing about Vue, though, and all these frameworks is defining your own components and encapsulating all the logic based on those components together. So let's move on. So I've been, man, I'm just so good at trackpad. So let's move on to, did I actually hit return here? Gotta get stash, because I changed something. Okay. Alright, so let's move on, and since we've been dealing with people, let's make a person component. So we're doing V4, and we're going to iterate and make a bunch of persons, I guess, people. So let's look at how we set this up. Let me just scroll. So first thing you can do, you do is you define a person component, And really all I'm doing right here is defining a template. And this is just one way of doing it. There's like 4 or 5 different ways of doing it. You can do it this way. You can define it inline down here. All you would have to do is create an object, replace this person component down here with an object that had a template property that you set to the template. But with this going right here, so I've got that template defined, I've made a component, and then right here, oh wait, no, I've done it right up here, sorry. Right here, this actually tells Vue this is a valid component. Whenever you see person, run this template. So, we saw we had it up there before, and all I have in there is the same thing over and over again. So let's do something more useful with this. At least I think that's what my next step is. I'll find out here. Oh, this might actually be the, this is the cleaner embed version. So you can do this if you want. And you can also do something like this. So let me go down here and we'll just replace this sucker with hash, whoa, touching my trackpad, hash person. Wow, and that worked on the first try. That's amazing. So you can have your templates defined, and that might be more of your flavor. And you can also, if you're running preprocessors on the HTML, that means in your template tag, you could put a lang equals, and then have it be, what are the jade or something like that. You could have that be processed. So that kind of stuff, which is might be handy for you. I never use that stuff, at least not yet. So let's move on to the next one. What do you think I'm trying to do? Turd. Okay, so now we're doing something a little more fancy. We're actually going to pass in some data here. So we're doing this v4 and we're getting a person variable. So now let's pass that person variable into our person component. So here we can say I have this colon person. That means I'm going to be passing in a property. And if you just put in, if I didn't have this colon, it would think this is a string literal. But since I do have this colon, it thinks, okay, this is, I'm expecting an object, or I'm expecting a variable that was defined. So it's going to pass in that variable. You could also replace this syntax with vbind person, but I like the shorthand better, so it's just a little cleaner, I think. And then you have to do something down here. You have to tell the component that it's going to be expecting a property of person to be coming in. Otherwise, it doesn't know to even look in the attributes for it. And then I'm defining the template inline here. And here you can see I'm still doing this at thing because otherwise I'm still in a blade template. It'll interpret like that. We'll get rid of the at in pretty soon here. So, and then I just dig down into person.name and I echo that out, and now we have what we had before, except now we have a component. And now we could move that component around to a different file, include it separately, make commits on just that file and change it in a more encapsulated way. So let's move on to, did I change anything? I'll find out. Nope, okay. Okay, so another cool thing you can do is, now I've added some data down here. I've added, everybody now has an age, 22, and a pay grade. And what I've also done is I've created this thing called a computed property. Computed properties are really cool. Computed properties, whenever it needs to throw that data onto the page, or whenever that data changes, it's going to update this computed property. So I have one called salary, and it's just a function that adds 30,000 plus whatever this person's pay grade is times 10,000. So if your pay grade's 1, you'll make 40,000. If your pay grade's 2, you make 50,000. They're just 10,000s over the base pay or something like that. So in the model doesn't change. Everybody's pay grade is just going to be this 1, 2, whatever. But on the view, it's going to say, okay, they're 22 years old and they make $40,000. Oh yeah, let me show you one more thing up in the template here. So here's the template, right? I got echoing out the person's name, age, and then I do salary, which then it's going to look for the computed value because it has one down there named salary, and then I'm piping it through a currency filter. And that currency filter is smart enough to know, okay, default to dollars, and I'm going to put cents at the end. You can change you can change it to like yen or something like that just by putting a literal and then that yen character like that. Except I'd actually have to use a valid character, and I don't have one copy pasted right now. So, and that's how you wind up with this, which is pretty handy. And you can see down here, none of this stuff says they make $40,000. You just remember their pay grade, and you just calculate on the way out. So, because you don't really want to store that in your model, might as well just calculate on the way out. Let's move on here. Let me catch up to myself on here. Probably missing all sorts of stuff I keep meaning to talk about because I'm not reading my script. All right, so the binding is happening here is dynamic, two-way or whatever you want to call that. So I've added some inputs here so we can tweak these. Let's take a look at that. All right, so now I got all these people. I can change their name on the fly to, like Butterson. And they're 21 years. Nah, they can't drink. Never mind.
Boy, I'm using that.
And they have a -1 pay grade, so they make 10,000 less than 30,000 the base pay, or I could make them a lot of money. And the other cool thing is,
Sorry,
yeah, no problem. So here's the person up here. I'm still echoing out that JSON payload, and that JSON payload that updates too. So as I decrease or increase that, so like this is the model, and you can keep this on the screen just to make sense and see if you're changing things, or if you've instantiated a piece of the data and now it's decoupled from the model, because you can do that. Or if you want to make sure that you're in sync, or if you want to make sure you're only syncing at certain points. Okay, they change a bunch of form stuff, and then they hit submit, and then it gets pushed back up to the root model or wherever your model is actually sitting. So it's just a really nice way to keep track of what you're doing. So let's keep chugging here. So we're moving on to methods now. This is where you start really pushing stuff around. So up here in my template, I'm adding a button. I have a v-on click. This has some shortcut syntax. You can just do @click, which is a lot nicer, I think. So I'll just leave that in there. What I'm doing is, so we know that we're iterating person in people, right? So whenever you're inside of one of those loops, you get an index variable that's for the current scope. One nice thing about Vue.js and Angular and all the other ones is that they isolate your scope for you, something that doesn't normally happen automatically in JavaScript, and that can really trip you up and confuse you. So in this one, you get some isolated scope variables, and in this one, index is just for that current deepest scope. So you'll get that they're on the 0th or the 12th element. And I'm saying remove person, and I'm triggering some sort of remove method. So let's find out where that is. Oops, it was probably right up here. You guys are all staring at it. Nope, it was above. Okay, so if you have methods, you define a method's property, and you can define as many as you want in there. Here's one called remove. It takes an argument called index, and all I do is splice it out of the array. But I want to splice it out of the parents, people array. It doesn't have a people array in this component. So what you can do is you can traverse up to the parent, get the people property, which is that array, and then just take it out of there. You could also do a delete on the index if you wanted to, but splice was the first thing I wrote. So, and then what you get is this. So now I got buttons on here, and I can just, nope, sorry Farn, sorry Guy, sorry Gloria. And as you can see, my model's updating as I go, and then all the stuff's still happening. So. Let's move on. Oh, I got a stash. I changed that thing. What am I doing? Oh, 17. Okay, so let's move on to app building. I think this is just let me just talk about what we're going to need for building an app. So if we're going to do this sensibly, we probably don't want to be working in a blade view, because we're going to have to prefix all our curly braces with an @ sign, @ symbol, and everything's going to be sitting in one mega file that's doing everything. So one nice thing is you can split out these components into separate Vue files, .vue, and if you use a Node plugin called Vueify, it hooks up automatically with Browserify. And what Browserify does is, say you're writing some JavaScript, you can do require this, require that. Browserify will notice that you're doing that. It will get, if you have already npm installed those dependencies, so say it's Vueify, say it's Vue or Vue itself. You would install those with npm, and then you would run like a gulp task that would go, it would run Browserify, it'll take all your stuff, it'll take your main.js, it'll take all the component views that you made, and it'll take all the dependencies, bundle them up into one JavaScript file, and then you'll reference that on your page. That's the only thing you'll include in your HTML, and then your page will work. So let's take a look at what that looks like once I get that started. If I actually started it here, no, let me go to the next step. Okay, so this is what the blade now looks like. Super simple. All I have is an app tag. This is basically all I'm going to have from here on out. I'm going to add one little thing to this later, but that's like almost the last step. And then I include, they call it demo.js, not main.js. And now whenever I change any of my JavaScript or Vue files, I'm going to have to run a gulp command. But that's the only annoying thing. But gulp's pretty sweet. You can set up watchers on these files in PHP Storm and have it run gulp pretty darn easily. And you can have a gulp task that does gulp watchers work too. Though I would use a PHP Storm watchers because they're less processor intensive. Gulp watchers are kind of nasty, I've noticed. Use like 15% of my CPU constantly.
It depends on the number of files you're watching.
Really? Okay. I'm telling entire directories, with like the ** thing. So maybe that's my problem. Everything in, JavaScript, demo components, something like that. All right, so I have this app tag up here. That means I probably have an app component. I also have demo.js. This is what's actually the root of all the Browserify stuff. So Browserify is just pointed at this and it just goes. So I'm requiring Vue. I must have npm installed Vue. I'm requiring Vue resource. Just ignore this until the next step when we actually use that. But I've npm installed that as well and hooked it up to Vue. I must have created this demo components app.vue. Let's go take a look at that real quick. Oh, not copy. Do you really think that was a right click? So here's my app.vue. So these files are awesome. This is just like before when I was showing you could use a template tag inline on your HTML. You can use a template tag inline here. And this is the template for the app, the entire app thing. So all it is a row and a MD12 column, and I'm just saying, ooh, spanking new component template and echoing out some sort of message variable that should be in there. You can also have a style tag in here, and this will be applied to every instance of your app. But I'm not using it in this case. And you can also use stuff like lang equals SCSS, and if you have SCSS installed and it's compatible with Browserify, which it is, Browserify will notice that and compile your SCSS into CSS, and away you go. Same thing with script. It could be CoffeeScript. Same thing with template. It could be Jade, or whatever flavor you love. And instead of doing the new Vue thing, which we've already done in demo, what we do here is just export default. So when we do that require, it's going to get sucked in properly. So any of your non-root Vue instances that you're using with Vueify or Browserify, you're going to write like this. Same exact thing, just the wrapping thing just looks a tiny bit different. So in here all we have is data. I actually have this thing where I do data as a function, and this is an ECMAScript 6 function looking thing, because normally you would do data : space function, whatever. In this you just omit the : function.
Is it using like Babel or something like that to translate? Or
yes, exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, Browserify just does that, which is awesome. So yeah, Browserify is sweet. You could do a whole other one on that probably, a whole other one of these. But I'm returning a data object. So really I could have just set data : some data object. But in this, every time you instantiate app, you're going to make sure you get a brand new one of these objects here. If you just use data : something, and then you instantiate that, you're going to end up like passing the same data variable around, and you'll run into issues. You'll definitely run into issues. I did, and that's how I figured out how to do this. So, and this is a best practice.
You can export default and make that an actual class, like default class. What is it? App, and then it'll actually generate it as an app, and you can give it all the nice little functions. Or have you not tried that?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. let's go back into here and take a look at how we got the component registered. It's just like before, where we're going to have a components object, and then in there we're going to say, okay, this is the actual name of the tag, and then this is pointing to something. Before, this was a template, an object with a template in there. Now we're just pointing it at this entire require, and this is the pattern we're going to use for the rest of this demo. And what does this end up looking like? Looks like this spanking new component template, and then this was a bound variable that said hello Vue. Let's move on and actually do something. So since this is a Laravel app, I have a route that's doing some junk. I've already pre-populated this. Oh man, not kernel. I already had it up too. I've already migrated and seeded this database with examples. So this app that we're going to build it's just one little part. It's just viewing a list of examples that people have written. Think like Stack Overflow, but just specific examples. It has a user associated with it. It has a title. It has a big Markdown section where the person puts the actual guts of the example in there. It has tags. It has comments related to it. And all of that is going to be returned by this API/examples route. So all you have to do is hit this app at API/examples, and it's going to give you the first 10 results. If you put a URL parameter of page equals something, then it's going to offset by 10 times whatever your page equals. So -1, I guess. So it'll just give you the next page that you're on. So we're going to use this as our way to AJAX in the examples. And so let's look at how we set that up. So nothing's changed in our blade. We can just kind of forget about that. We can just work in Vue, which is really nice. Let's get into here. So in the root Vue instance, this is where Vue resource comes in handy. Vue resource is just kind of like the AJAX handler for Vue, and it simplifies that a bit. You'll see this is actually how we're going to pull this stuff in. So you can put I think there's on. I just use ready, but there's something else. There's like on complete or something like that, or on, I don't remember. There's a few different stages at which you can fire functions. On ready means it's already drawn to the screen. It's the very first moment it's ready to go. So at that point, I'm going to grab all the data. So I'm going to hit that URL, like I was saying, API/examples, and then I'm going to set this examples variable or property. I'm going to set it with the response data, which is just a big JSON payload. So let's see what that looks like. Oh yeah, let me show you what we're doing in here in our app view as well. Here's what our template looks like now. So I'm saying let's load our data via AJAX, and then I have a pre-tag, and I'm piping all that data through the JSON filter. And we end up with this gigantic mess of stuff. So I still have that message that we used to display hello Vue because I forgot to get rid of that. And then here's all the examples that we got back from the server in the AJAX call. So I got the first one, ID 1, title, whatever, Markdown, whatever. Has some username, has some upvotes. It has an example set ID. We don't use that because that's something else I'm trying to build into this app. Has language IDs. I don't use that either, but that would be something like PHP or JavaScript or something. It's just an enum. It has created update ats, and then it also nests inside of this one example all the comments, which could be 0 or a bunch of comments. And then it also nests in tags, which could be 0 to a bunch of comments. And these tags all have names. These comments are all have a markdown section and then username. So we're going to build something that displays basically all of that pretty quickly here. So let me see if there's anything I was supposed to tell you specific about this step that was really tricky. Nope, cool. Probably just forgot it in all the rest of the steps. Let's move on. Come on. Man, I hate friggin' trackpads. Golly, I'm just an idiot with them. Okay, so for this one, we've actually made an example component right here. So if we have an example component, that probably means we've made an example.vue file, just like we had an app.vue file. So here's our new example.vue file. Our template, we just have a panel heading. Looks like we're just using Bootstrap panel. I'm pretty lazy like that. We have a heading where we're going to have the title. And it looks like I'm doing a pull right on upvotes. So we're going to have a title, and then we're going to have upvotes slammed onto the right. Let's pretend like somebody's actually looked at this and thought it was good. Then we're going to have a big section for the Markdown, which is going to be in the panel body. And right now, I'm just outputting all the Markdown. I have 3 curly braces here because eventually we're going to want that Markdown to parse into HTML. And in order for it not to escape the HTML and display raw HTML and actually, write the HTML into the div, we have to use those triple curly braces. So, and then in the footer, I just have the person information, username, created at, update at, and then also I display all the tags with a v4, and then I think the style is just to put a little margin on it, right? And then I have the tags tag property, which is the name in there. So if we looked in that JSON body, all of these fields would match up to something in there. So let's see how we're powering it. Okay, looks like we take a property of example. So if we go into our app view where we actually write the example tag in, looks like we are. Yep, example. We're passing the example in that way. And that's it. We didn't do anything else to this sucker. Actually, I changed this to an array just so it would work a little nicer. But otherwise, that's how everything's working there. So let's take a look at that. Wow, we got something really pretty now. Got the title, all the stuff. This isn't really that pretty because we're not running the Markdown yet. So let's run to the Markdown. I think that's the next step. Markdown time, yay! So with the Markdown one, we don't really have to do anything different with the view. We're giving all the data we need to the example component. So in the example component, we're going to do some stuff to render Markdown. So the first thing I do is I require marked, which is a node package that will take in Markdown and spit out HTML. So I require it here. Browserify knows what to do. I'm setting an option for GHM, which is GitHub flavored Markdown, and GitHub flavored Markdown is the one true Markdown, except no substitutes. It's really the only way that you're going to get nice code blocks and stuff like that, and it's what we're all used to from Slack and Trello and all that jazz, and what everybody should get used to. All I added down here was this filters property, and this is just saying, hey, I've defined some custom filters. Now, what you might normally do is you might have something in here that's like, remove first letter or something like that, and then you pass a function in here, and then you snip off the first letter or something. But marked, all it does is take a string and returns a string. So all you have to do in here is stick marked in there, and it's going to pass the argument in and get HTML back out. So now we can use that filter called marked up in our Markdown area. So right here, all I do is pipe the Markdown through marked, and it's going to render oh so pretty. So we get some nice looking Markdown, and then we have a nice code block down here too, which is completely gibberish down here. Look at that cyberspace ping. Ooh, I like that. I like this. I like this one. Devolved Human Resource Data Warehouse. That really sounds like a thing, doesn't it? That's awesome.
Yeah, but if you put it on the web, it will become a thing.
Yes, exactly,
people
right?
Use it because it's already official. It's like crap your grandmother read in the newspaper. It has to be.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going back to the file again.
Might as well forward this right now, right?
DHRDW, man.
It's the newest thing, man.
Yep. So we've already done some cool stuff here. We have an app component that we've defined out of thin air, basically, and now we also have an example component, and we've nested that inside of our app component. So now that we're no longer afraid of nesting components, let's go one step further. We know that we had comments in there, but we're not displaying them, so let's create a comments component and display those stupid comments that people are making on this. So let's find out how we do that. So boom, right here, right under the tags, I have the comments tag. I'm passing in example.comments, which should be all the comments contained in this sucker. And do I do anything? Yeah, I do something down here. I import the comments just like we had done in app for example, but now we're just nesting one level deeper. So we're in example and we're importing comments.view. We're making sure that we have the component registered because comments are going to be something that we invoke with the examples component. And that's it. Let's go take a look at our comments.view that we created. Cool. All right. So here's the template. I've got a button at the top that's going to toggle whether or not the comments are even being shown because those people are really stupid. We don't want to show it without being sure that we really want to venture into this nasty mess. I have a click handler that's going to fire some function called showHide toggle. I have the button text is this show hide text, so that's some other property or something that's computed down below, and I'm typing it through a capitalized thing just to make sure everything looks good. So it's probably going to say either show comments or hide comments, but that's going to change depending on the state of this button. So, and then I also have, oh yeah, just iterating through all the actual stuff. So this vShow is going to be based on some show hide property, and that's probably going to toggle whether or not we're actually showing this entire div. It is doing that. That's what v-show does, based on the true or falseness of the value or the expression in there. And then I'm also iterating through all the comments here and actually rendering a comment. So it looks like it's just unordered list, iterating through all the comments as long as there are some comments. Otherwise, I'm going to say no comments yet. And then, so I got a list item. This is where I actually iterate through, sorry, in the li. So I got a heading of the username created at, and then I have a markdown thing. And looks like I'm using that marked thing. I wonder if I define marked again in here. Yes, I do. Okay. I'm pretty sure I have to do this. But you're going to want to do it anyway, because think about how, now it's, number one, the scope is isolated for all your components. So that can keep your sanity straight. And now you can reuse this comments anywhere else comments appear, as long as you like this format. Maybe you would make it a little bit less opinionated. Maybe you'd pass in some more parameters for like, yes, show the toggle button. No, don't show the toggle button, and just always show them. You can control that sort of stuff and make it so that this is a more universal component. But you can sort of see how this is a reusable chunk that you could stick anywhere there might be comments on your site. So I'm doing the GitHub Markdown thing. I'm passing in the property of the comments that this thing's going to iterate over. I have that filter of marked. I have some data. It's a show hide, which starts out as false because I don't want to show comments unless somebody's clicked on this thing. I also have a computed value, and it's show hide text. And whenever somebody calls this show hide text or wants it to display, it's going to check whether or not show hide is true or false. And if it's true, then it's going to say hide the comments, because that means the comments are currently showed. So do you want to hide these? And then if it's false, it's going to say show. So show the comments. It's just for the text. It's just a really simple way to, it's just a really handy way to use computed values, I think. We also have the toggler, and all it does is invert show hide, and everything else is based on that. And what we end up with is this sucker, more devolved human resource data warehouse. But now we have a show comments thing down here, and there they are. Yay! Let's move on. There's something really tricky I was supposed to show you. Nope. Okay. What did I do next? Okay, so now that we have basically everything that we need for the example, we're able to render everything properly. The comments are rendering Markdown, even though I don't think I actually put any Markdown in those comments, but they are. If there were any fancy Markdown in there, let's make it so that we can show an entire page full of results and say we'll collapse the Markdown body, and it'll just show a heading and who it was created by and a number of upvotes so that we can see the whole thing. So we're going to need some stuff to be able to do that. Oh yeah, there's a thing I wanted to copy in on this one, but I think I'll just correct it. I had a typo in here. Let me change this real quick. Is this like editing in production? Okay. So we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a way to pass in whether or not we want to show the example by default. I'm going to use this with a property, and we're going to pass in false, which means the first time I iterate through all these, I don't want to show any of them unless somebody's clicked on the expandy thing to show this exact example. So we're going to pass through false by default, but maybe you would want to reuse the example component somewhere else where it's by itself on a page, and you want to pass in true on that page because it's only showing one example. Of course, it needs to be open. There's no collapsing feature, something like that. So this is just showing a way to make these components more reusable. I don't think we did anything in here for any of that. Nope. All right, let's move on down to example and see what's different in here. So now I have this in the entire. I just make it so if you click anywhere on the heading, it's going to do a show hide toggle, and that's going to follow the same pattern as just before in the comments, where we have just toggling a Boolean in the model, and our view is going to reflect that toggle. because that's how, if you're doing all this stuff where you have the model, the view reflecting the model, you might as well not do like a jQuery selector .toggle, because then your view is the model. Your state is stored in the display none CSS field, but in here it's all hooked up to the model, and if that show hide variable is true, it's going to be open. If it's false, it's going to be closed. So I also have a little glyph in here, and I have it echoing out show hide glyph, so that must be something that either updates depending on whether or not the thing's toggled to change what the icon looks like. Then I have the same thing that I had before there, the title and the upvotes. Here in the Markdown body, I have a vShow of show hide, so that's also going to toggle based on that parameter. And that's it. And I call the comments and we going through that. So let's see what I've updated in here. All right, so it looks like I'm doing some different stuff with my properties. Before I just had an array and I would just list out the properties. Another cool thing with properties is if you list them out this way, you can do validation on them. So I can say I absolutely have to have the example payload, otherwise I'm not going to be able to render anything. So make that required. Otherwise it's going to barf some stuff into your console and say nothing's happening here. You can also, there's like way to do functions if required fails on certain things. So you could have a, if required fails, throw up some text, this thing has an error, something like that. You can give it a type. So right here, I'm doing that show hide. I was passing in that false value through an attribute. Everything that comes through an attribute that wasn't a variable before is going to come through as a string. That's one thing that kind of stinks. I wish it did automatic coercion, but frankly, I guess it's better that it does it this way and you have to be explicit, because otherwise it would be trying to evaluate the string as true or false. And here, you can coerce it using your own function, and in here I just turn it into a Boolean, essentially, with this. So that seemed to work pretty well for me. The default, if that isn't present, is true. So if I omit that, it's going to show that example. So that's one way of making this component more reusable, like I was saying before. Maybe you want to use it somewhere else where it shows by default. Unless you explicitly tell it to be false, unless you explicitly pass this thing in as false to hide it, it'll show up and it'll be expanded by default. I also have the method where all it does is invert the show hide property. And then I also have this show hide glyph. So just before, like before when I had the button that said show comments, hide comments, and the show hide would invert based on the state of the model, here I'm changing whether or not the glyph is a triangle pointing to the left for collapsed or down for expanded, just like in most file structure things where you're expanding and collapsing something. So depending on that, it's just going to flip that sucker around. Just handy dandy. Nothing else is different there. There's one extra thing I did in comments because I noticed that I have the button was showing no matter what, and I only want to show that show comments button if because I don't have it in like a goofy spot. Maybe I should rearrange this and rethink this a little bit. But what I can do is I can traverse up to the parent, and then I can snoop on its show hide variable. And if the parent is shown, then I'll show the button in for the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to hide it. And what this all looks like is this. So now I'm showing all 10. Oh yeah, I also changed something. Well, let me show you something else that I was doing up here in app. So when we were doing the V4 up here, V4 example in examples, before I had a, let me just do it. Let me just edit it in production here. Limit 1. Is it limit or limit by? We'll find out. It's limit by. Oh, wait, I would need to run gulp. Well, so in the previous step, gosh darn it. So in the previous step, I had limit by 1, and that's how I was only displaying the 1. I just used that as kind of a temporary development thing just so I wouldn't have a ton of stuff getting thrown on the page. Maybe it would take longer or something, I don't know. But in the next step, I just remove that.
Does it paginate?
It will. That's the last step, actually. We're going to hook into Laravel's default pagination stuff and figure out just how easy that is to do. It's kind of easy, kind of difficult. You got to think a little bit, but it's not too bad. But let's look at what we end up with. We end up with this. We get this where we can minimize or maximize. We can click anywhere on this heading, and it'll open it up. And you'll notice, even though that open comments button is supposed to display just below the tags here, because it's showing based on the state of that parent one, it only displays once we've expanded this one all the way, and then we can show the comments down here. Yay! So now we can barf more stuff onto the screen. It's a little bit more manageable. So now that we have a whole page full of results, why don't we move on to having multiple page full of results? Because pagination is just a blast, right? So move on here. Oops, that's the same one. Okay. So one cool thing you can do with Laravel. Let me see if I have this sucker in here. So for our demo, I'm actually passing a page count variable through now. We can see we're sending that to the view here called page count, and all I'm doing is taking the total divided by 10 because we're paginating by 10. There's probably some thing I failed to look up where you could just see how many pages are there, but I just did the total number of results divided by my page size, and that seems to work. So I'm passing through my maximum page. I figured that was something I had to do on the Laravel side. I didn't really want to query for it ahead of time. I figured I would just do that here. So, oops, that's not where I wanted to go. So let's go into our blade. When I said I wasn't going to change anything else, I lied. I'm going to change one more thing in here, and all I'm doing is passing through another property of page count. And all it is a number, so I'm passing through a literal, and that's why I don't have the colon out front here, because it's not looking for a thing called page count or a thing called 10, I guess is what this one might be, because I have 100 examples in here. So all it's getting is a number, and app is going to accept that number. So in our app view, we're going to look down in here, and we're going to see a new property defined eventually. Page count. All right, cool. It's required. We have a type of number. I might not have needed to do required. I probably could have given it a default of 1 page or something like that. That would have worked a little bit better. And then I'm coercing it into an integer because it's going to come through as a string. And then I also have some other event stuff going on. Let's not look at that right now. Let's go down into, sorry, not that. Let's go up into our template and see where we're sticking these pagination stuff in here as. Oh, it looks like I have a brand new component. So that means I have a new component.view called pagelinks.view. So my page links are just a div with if the current page is 1, it's going to do, or wait, no, sorry. I've got some logic in here to figure out how many of these I'm going to display. I'm going to display 3 pages previous of where I'm at, 3 pages next of where I'm at, and then the current page. And that current page is going to be a disabled link because there's no reason to reload the current page. So what I have is if we're able to draw anything to the left because we're on a page greater than the first page, we're going to draw some, and we're going to do a v4 for however many pages based on, where is it, for page and pages. So that must mean I am making some sort of pages array somewhere that says how many total pages we want to display in there. So it's going to be, if we start on the first page, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, because I'm showing 3 pages ahead. And then, forget what this one does. Oh, this is just the right bounds. So this is my left bounds, this is my right bounds. Otherwise, I'm going to display all the other characters. If the page is the current page, I just display the page number and I don't render a link. So let's see what we're doing to power all this crap. Oh, it looks like I actually have some specific styling in here. I'm going to make something an ugly color pink. But I'm using the style tag here, and it's just going to style just on this this chunk. Really, it's going to style anything on the page that matches it, but it's only going to get pulled in when this component is on the screen. So I'm taking in a couple of properties, current page and page count. So current page must be something that the parent sets. So that's the one that app component sets. Page count, which is the total, and I'm going to keep coercing these into integers. But I could have probably, if I passed it in as a variable, I probably don't need to do that. I'm just being extra careful here. I have computed values. This is where I'm really doing the fancy stuff, where I'm saying the minimum page shown. I'm just doing some bounds checking here to say, okay, well, the lowest page, if I'm already on the first page, I'm not going to show negative pages. I'm not going to show pages past my maximum page count. I'm going to create an array of all the pages based on those two. And then whenever any of that stuff changes, this will update because it's a computed value. And then I have a goto page function. And this is doing something fancy. And this is where I'm going to go back to the parent component. We'll describe this. So this is doing this.dispatch. This.dispatch is going to dispatch an event up the chain. So it's going to traverse all the parents until one of the parents catches the event. And it's going to pass the page that I passed in. So what this is saying, go to page 2. It's going to dispatch that event saying, hey, go to page 2 up until something catches it. And the thing that catches that is an event on the app component. So now I have events, which is really just event. But I have one called go to page. I don't need to have that in single quotes. I don't know why I did that, but it works either way. For that one, I specify the page, and then I just do that AJAX call just like I had done before on the ready, except now I specify a URL parameter of what page I'm on. And then I set, just like down here, examples to whatever the payload was, and then I update the current page that I'm on based on what I just set it. And that's it. Now this does what I think it does. Now I have page numbers. And I added them to the top and the bottom, but let's just look at how they work here. I can click on 3. I can click on 5. My bounds checking is happening. Everything's just rocking and rolling. Oop, I don't know how to use a trackpad still. You can go back or forwards because I added buttons just to go current page +1, current page -1. I conditionally show these depending on whether or not there is a current page or a next page. And there we go. That's pretty much the whole app. The next little step is really minor. I don't really have anything to explain. I'm just going to put it up there. I don't know why I made another step. But now I have first and last pages. This is just the exact same thing, except I say the last page. So now we can slam ourselves to the end. We can see all of them in there. I don't bother displaying it if I am... Oh, I am showing it if I'm on the next... Well, some of my logic isn't so fancy. I thought I had it so if... Yeah. So my left bounds is fine. Like... There's no reason to say go to the first one, this button and this button do the exact same thing as the first page would do. I meant to do that for 9, but I must have forgotten. Whatever. Or the next to last page. But whatever. And that's the whole Vue thing. You can see how you can really crank some stuff around. Everything's nice and encapsulated in its own little files. And you know, if you like trashed your comments or whatever, you don't trash the rest of the app. You just trash the comments section. So it's really nice for developing, I would assume. This is all that I've really written in it. This and some other stuff where it's like I wrote like an editor type thing for this. So here's this one. Here's an ACE editor, and this stuff updates on the fly. There's a little, since this is kind of slow, it kind of waits like 100 milliseconds or something like that before it updates. And you know, you can stuff, and then as you do this, you can see your headings change in size, all that fun stuff. So there's all sorts of really cool stuff you can do with Vue. Really, it's just like Angular and the other ones, but I found the learning curve to be very accessible.
Wow.
So I thought it was sweet, and it seems to be pretty darn fast. So hope you enjoyed.
Awesome.